Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to all of our panelists. This is a question to the panel, although the most relevant example that we can call on is the response from Equifax this summer to the major data breach it endured. There are state-by-state laws requiring private and public entities to notify individuals when there are security breaches of their personally identifiable information. These laws represent the lowest amount of communication required. I'm interested in what companies are deciding to proactively do to help notify and help the consumers affected by these breaches. So we could start perhaps with Mr. Smith and Mr. Barros. I know that you have both stated that Equifax has taken big steps to further the consumer satisfaction in their interactions with your company, but many of those steps seem to have come only after public outcry to your initial response. So my question more broadly is, can each of you elaborate on what considerations you and your companies take into account when determining steps to notify and remediate the damage done to consumers from data breaches?
Senator, if I may start, and Mr. Barros, if you want to add on. One, on the notification process, we took to obviously very seriously the state requirements as far as time of notification.
But of course, I'm asking beyond that, because those are minimal. So what are you guys now deciding to do beyond that, and how do you, what considerations are you making?
Well, this one of my top priorities has been to consumer response and hardening our security system. This is what I mentioned at the beginning. On the consumer side, we definitely made our call centers more scalable. We improved our platforms. So in other words, you can get in and out, you can have access within 3 minutes, you can have a response back.
But I am also talking about your proactive efforts to notify consumers beyond the requirements that state law, for instance, gives
Correct.
you.
Now, with the amount of hits that we have, we've been working with the consumers, making sure that they use the services that we have provided for free for them for the transitional period. And we will continue to do again when we introduce our new lock and unlock for free for life.
Well, Mr. Smith.
Senator, the one thing I'd add is that the process we did use was one legal and acceptable, and it seemed like it worked. He mentioned we had 450 million consumers.
We can pursue this on the record. That isn't my question, and I want to get to the other panelists. I'm asking for now, regardless of state laws, at minimum, you have to follow it. But what are the factors that you are considering when you decide when to notify a consumer? And if any of the other panelists would like to answer just very briefly, that would be helpful.
At Yahoo, we generally took a proactive stance due to the global nature of our business, which is to say, yes, laws vary from state to state, but our view was frequently, if user notification was required anywhere, we did it everywhere.
Right.
And we endeavored to be both accurate and comprehensive, because accuracy and comprehensiveness are very important, as well as analyze how any data might have been misused or abused, and also be swift in the response.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, at Verizon, what we do is first we always obviously look at what the law requires, but then we look at what we think is the right thing to do for the customer. And if in a particular situation we think it's the right thing to notify the customer, then that's what we do.
Thank you.
Our company doesn't hold consumer information, so it's not applicable.
I didn't think so, but just checking. I wanted to follow up with Mr. Barros about the difference between credit lock and credit freeze services. Placing a freeze on their credit is one of the best ways consumers can protect themselves, of course, from identity fraud. Equifax has stated that it will waive the fee for consumers to place a freeze on their credit for several more months in response to the major data breach earlier this year. At that point, the company has stated, and I believe you stated in your testimony, Mr. Smith, that it will offer consumers the ability to lock their credit for free. Can you please share with the committee the legal differences between a credit lock and a credit freeze in terms of consumers' rights and protections, and who has access to a consumer's credit report when it is frozen versus locked?
Fundamentally, at the end of the day, there's no difference between a lock and a freeze. When you freeze, you use a regulatory process to do it. Then you make a phone call, you identify yourself, you get a PIN, and you're ready to execute a freeze or not. When you do the lock, the reason why you did the lock was the simplicity of the process. So in financial institutions, they're trying to get to your file to open an account, won't be able to do. In both situations, they're frozen, or if the file is frozen, or if the file is locked.
Well, and I see that my time is up. I think there are experts who would disagree with you in terms of your statement that there's no difference between a freeze or a lock. And one of the things I will follow up with you in writing about is the degree of fees that Equifax gets from helping consumers unfreezing or unlocking their information. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr.